Hi, I'm Amanda Morgan, and this is Not Just Cute, the podcast, where we discuss all kinds of topics relating to intentional whole child development and supporting the critical work of parents and teachers of young children. Today, I'm talking about how to get parents on board with play in your classrooms right from the start. Just like the children, each parent in your classroom comes with a different set of life experiences and perspectives. And for some, the concept that their child's best learning will be through play is a new revelation. Some may be expecting more of a sit down and do worksheets type of environment, and others may actually be supportive of play, but still not exactly sure why it's best for their children. One of the items I recently shared at a conference was the idea of having a parent night or a parent play date to get everyone on the same page. I've had a few follow-up questions since then, so today I'm going to walk you through some ideas for structuring that event to make it more successful. You can find show notes for this episode at notjustcute.com/podcast/episode 27. Before we get started, a quick insider tip that the Why We Play letter packages are ready for back to school with special VIP pricing through Labor Day. These letters are a powerful tool for creating an ongoing discussion about play within your school community. If you want to take advantage of the VIP discount, make sure that you hop over to notjustcute.com/whyweplay and download the free sample letter and get the conversation started. There's a lot of ground to cover today, so let's jump right in. I was recently part of my good friend Deborah Stewart's Discover conference, where I was talking about the importance of getting parents on the same page with you as a teacher when it comes to the importance of play in your early childhood classroom. As I mentioned in the intro, we recognize that the children in our classroom come to us from many different life experiences, and we find out how to meet them where they are and scaffold their learning and growth. And by that same perspective, we know that the parents come to us at different places in their understanding of the importance of play and its role in the development and the learning of their children. And with that, they have different expectations for what the school experience will look like. And so it's important that we take some time at the beginning of the year and really throughout the whole year to teach the parents as well as the children so that we can communicate to them the importance of play. So one of the ideas that I shared in Deb's conference was the idea of having a parent play date or a parent night that was focused on play early on in the year, ideally. And I've had a few questions following that conference, so I thought that I'd spend a little time today going a little more in depth on that idea and how it might work in your classroom. Now, you have to know that I'm a big fan of being descriptive over prescriptive, so I'm going to be sharing a lot of ideas of what this might look like for you, but I want to put it out there right now that just like with your little people in your classroom, you have to be responsive to the big people as well and adjust and adapt to what's going to work best with the group that you're working with. So think of this more as a brainstorming session to get you started rather than a script that you have to follow strictly. So there's my disclaimer. Find what works for you. Hopefully this will spark some good ideas to get you started. So the idea behind a parent play night is that you get to teach a little bit about your why behind what you do in your classroom and help parents to start to see what that play looks like and the thought and the intention that goes into those play-based activities in your classroom. One big benefit from this experience, which you may want to point out to your parents, is that by seeing your classroom and the centers and the types of play that go on there, the parents will be prepared to ask better questions about their child's day when they get home each day. For some parents, if there's no worksheet or a project coming home in the backpack, they don't really know what went on all day long, and they kind of just default to that generic, "What did you do today?" question, right? So with this experience in your play centers, they're going to be able to ask better questions like, what was in the sensory table today? Or did you build anything in the block center today? Or who did you play with? Or who did you sit by at circle time? Or did you learn a new song that you can teach me today? So these questions are going to help them to start much better conversations than that overgeneralized, "What did you do today?" And it's going to help them to look for more evidence and examples of learning and work and growth than just what came home in the backpack. As an extra bonus, this kind of an event, this parent play date, is going to give parents a chance to connect and meet each other and start putting some names and faces to the parents of the children that their own little ones are coming home and talking about each day. So it's a great way for building that homeschool connection and also building the community within and around your class. So those are some of the benefits. Now let's start with some of the logistics. How do you actually do this kind of an activity, this type of parent night? The first question that some of the people are asking is, where do you do this? Where should you hold this parent play date? And I think ideally you're going to have it in your classroom and have it set up like a normal school day. In fact, if you set it up just as it is for a school that you've already had just a few days prior, you can take pictures of the children playing in the areas to illustrate that kind of play and fill in some of the blanks of how the children play. So set up your classroom, have a school day, take pictures of the children playing and interacting and engaging with those activities and supplies and materials. And then later on, plan that play date, set up the classroom with those same activities, and put some of those pictures in those areas so that they can see how the children play in that area. And they'll see their own children and see their faces all lit up and see them engaging with those activities and see it in an authentic way. You might want to post area or activity descriptions as well to help them understand what that area is about, what those activities are about. You could even post some of the why we play letters. So the why we play at the sensory table could be posted by your sensory table activity. There's one for the block area and the easel and the dramatic play area and on and on. So you could have one of these letters set up on the wall or on a table in a sheet protector or even in one of those acrylic frames so that it stands up right on the table or in the play area. And you can have these letters teaching the parents about that area and what type of play is going on there and what type of learning and development is tied into that type of play. So you can find these letters, a link to these letters in the show notes or at notjustcute.com/why we play. So this parent night might also be a good time to introduce the letters if you're using them and let the parents know that they can look for them as they come home throughout the year and that when they see them, they can connect them mentally back to this activity and back to this experience that they had in this parent night so that you're keeping that consistent and cohesive message throughout the year. So having some kind of information posted is not only going to better inform your parents, but for some of those parents who might not feel as comfortable jumping right into the play, it's going to give them something to read and a way to engage in the activity in a different way that's maybe more comfortable for them, especially starting out into the night. So kind of think of it as like a hands-on museum display. Some people will jump right into the activity and others are going to take their time reading the placard and observing other people. So having something like the Why We Play letters would give them some great information and also help them through that phase of entering play, which honestly is a challenge for a lot of our little ones. And it can sometimes be an even bigger challenge for their parents, right? To enter into a play situation and to get started. So having those letters is going to inform them, and it's also going to give them kind of a soft entry into each of these activities. Okay, so your room's all set up, right? And you're ready to go. So the next question that I hear is, should I have the parents rotate in groups, set a timer and have them rotate, or have them just kind of have open centers? And I think it depends on your group, but my preference would be to keep it open, just like you would with free choice centers, so that they can see how their children play and how they follow their interests. You could even spend a little bit of time in the introduction talking about why you allow children to choose their centers and how some children are going to really focus in on one task or activity for a long amount of time and why that's important and why you allow and encourage that, because that deep play is so important. Okay, so another thing to think about is whether or not to have them bring their children with them. So again, this could go either way. But let me just talk you through some of the pros and cons to each so that you can make your own determination of what's going to work best for your group. So if you have them bring the children with them, Some of the advantages would be that they can connect the names and the faces of the children. They can see the friendships that are budding and who their children are connecting with. And they can watch their children play and really see it in action. And that can kind of overcome some of that adult resistance that might be present. Some adults might feel a little uncomfortable at first jumping into play. So being able to just watch their children do it, they can learn a lot through that observation. And it also gives the children an opportunity to be the experts and to show off their classroom and to show off their friends and to kind of be the tour guide for their parents. Now, on the other hand, however, some of the cons of inviting the children with them for that same night is, first of all, just that it might get really crowded to have that many bodies in one room, right? The other thing to consider is that the parents might just end up visiting while the kids play without really paying attention to the play, right? When they are the ones that are expected to play, when the adults are expected to be the ones playing, they may actually pay more attention to things, knowing that there's this expectation that they should at least engage with the centers in some way, rather than just checking out and visiting while their kids are playing. Now, visiting is fine. And just like in your classroom, you want to encourage those social interactions, but you also don't want the parents to just ignore the play. Now, on the flip side, if you have parents only and don't have children come that night, parents might be able to better focus on what you're trying to teach them, that the purpose is a little bit more clear. They are there to learn about play in your classroom and how to support and connect with their child at home, rather than what could easily be misconstrued as just a fun way to keep the kids busy while they visit with each other. So if it's just parents, I think they're more likely to engage personally and really focus in on your purpose for that night. So based on what you know about your parent group and their children, make the best informed choice that you can. But if you do invite the children, I would definitely be very direct in saying that you want the parents to visit and to get to know each other, but that your hope is that they'll really engage with their children and really focus on each play area that they go to and see it for all the learning and the developmental potential that's there, and not just as entertainment that keeps their kids busy. So once you've got everything set up, you know who you're inviting and you're ready to go, how do you start your night? So I think you first want to have some time for introductions, of course. Maybe you do that formally with everyone introducing themselves and who their child is. Maybe you start with refreshments first and all the visiting first so that they can make those connections rather than saving refreshments for the end. That might be a good way to just have an icebreaker visiting time. But at least in some way, spend a moment helping the parents get to know each other, because that's part of your focus as well. And that's going to get them a little bit more comfortable and ready to play. So when you're ready to start your presentation part, I'd think of it more of like a little mini lesson on play and then the activities themselves. So keep it really short, the presentation portion. Keep it really short and really focused, and then just let them play and let that do the work, do the magic. So my very favorite thing to have adults do when I'm speaking about play that I think might be a great way for you to start out is to ask them to tell about their childhood play memories. Once they start sharing about the cardboard forts and digging holes in the dirt and making mud pies and magic concoctions from things they found in the yard and playing school or pretending to have a band, you'll see their faces light up and they'll start laughing, and just really a total change that starts to come over them individually and as a group, as a whole. You'll see these faces and lights just light up in their eyes. And then you want to point that out, what you're noticing, and say, you know, as I listen to you, I see you light up. I see your eyes light up. I see this change that happens. And you can probably feel that too, right? And then I go on to say, you know, that change that we see is representative of a change that's actually going on in the brain as we play. Just as your faces light up, we know that the brain lights up as well. During play, there are these chemicals that promote brain growth and make it easier to process information and learn. And so that is why we use play as a tool for learning in the classroom. We know that it's one of the most effective and most efficient tools for children to learn and grow. You might want to talk really briefly here about what the developmental areas or domains or skills are that you focus on in your particular program, but just really briefly, just a sentence or two for each area, but just to call their attention to what those skill areas or developmental areas are so that they start to recognize them in the play as well. And then move on to the second part of why you use play. So you've talked about this first part. We use play because it affects the brain. It changes how it grows and develops, and it opens it up to learning. It's really just one of the most efficient and best ways to promote learning and development. And that's one of the first reasons parents think of why we're here. Why are our kids here at school? They want them to learn and to grow. We know that play is one of the best ways to do that. So the second reason that I tend to emphasize when I talk to parents might go something like this. The other reason we use play in the classroom is because we know that it supports social skills and social emotional health. Studies show that these skills will be some of the most important skills your child will gain during these early years, and they're actually some of the most predictive skills for long-term outcomes. So while your child is learning academic content through play, they're also learning about how to make friends and work together and solve problems and be creative. And that is just as important, if not more so, than some of these academic skills that we're working on as well. It's also been shown that giving children these play opportunities helps to promote emotional health and happiness, and that's something we're just as concerned with here in our classroom. Then give them the invitation. We want you to see a little bit of what's going on in our play activities and help you to recognize some of what we see when we put these activities out in our classroom. They're fun and they're cute, but they're so much more. They're promoting really important skills that we're intentionally supporting through these play activities every day in our classroom. And these are things that can be going on at home as well. So what we'd like you to do is spend the next 20 minutes or so exploring some of these centers. And again, you might mention what the actual time frame is for that type of play in your regular school day, but you really don't need to use quite as long of a time frame for the parents because your purpose is different. So then I would say something like, there's some information posted nearby each play area to help you see what's going on behind the scenes. And I'd really love for you to read that, but I also want you to channel that childhood playfulness that you just talked about and explore the learning areas and see what kinds of experiences your child will have here and what kinds of skills your child will be practicing and what kinds of concepts they're going to be exploring. This will help you to not only see what learning you can expect to be going on here, but it will also help you to have richer conversations about what your child did at school each day, just because you know more specifically what's going on. Now, just like in our classroom, you're free to choose which activity you'd like to engage with and how long you'd like to stay there. Some children will be done with one activity in 5 minutes and then spend an hour intensely working in another area. And we know that deep work is important. So spend some time, move around, and check things out. I'll be popping in to visit at different activity areas, and I'll be available for questions. Now, this might be really important to help keep things going around. I would say, if you have questions about the activities, I'm happy to answer them during this exercise. But if they're about other school questions, I'll be happy to talk with you about those afterwards. Because at the beginning of the year, they're going to have a lot of questions about a lot of things. So make it clear that you are there for questions about those play activities right now, and you'll be available for all the other questions afterwards. So that could be it to your introduction, just really short and sweet. Here's why we play in our classroom. And those points, the two that I often use, if you boil it right down, is that it's the best way for learning and development, and it's going to support social and emotional skills and growth and social and emotional health. And if those are the two things you can keep coming back to over and over, this is why we play in our classroom. It's the best way for them to learn and develop, and it's good for them socially and emotionally. And that's really the foundation for everything else. So come back to those perspectives, those points frequently throughout the year, but you've anchored them now at the beginning of this activity, and it doesn't need to take very long. It doesn't need to go in depth. You can if you'd like to, and if that's the type of thing your parents respond to, but you can also keep it short and sweet. Don't feel like you need to make a long presentation, because it's those play activities that are going to do the teaching. So you're going to send them off to play and to explore and to check out these activities to see what your room areas are like. and maybe to read some of those placards about why we play in the sensory table, why we play with art, why we play with dramatic play. And then you're going to float around like you would on a preschool day, right? You're going to scaffold and support just like you do on a school day, but you're going to do it at their level, at the parent's level, which would probably look more like asking about how their child would engage with this activity, or talking about your experiences with it and how children use it and how they learn from it. You might want to teach them the signal that you use for coming to large group, for signaling to your children that it's time to clean up and to come back, and give them that signal at the very beginning and let them know that you'll be using it in X amount of time, however long you've decided to have set aside for this activity. And then when that time is up, use your signal, bring them back as a group, and maybe discuss just a little bit about their experience and observations, or maybe highlight a few activity areas, pull them out and talk about, did anybody play here? And here's why I use it. And here's some things that the children love about it. But you could maybe just highlight a few of those activities and talk briefly, maybe about your daily schedule, or maybe just answer a few questions. Whatever it is, I would recommend coming back together at the end, even if it's just very short, just to thank them for coming and to know that there's this closing portion, so they're less likely to just slip out during the play portion. But just keep it short, keep the energy up, maybe wrap up with refreshments if you didn't start there, or, have refreshments at the beginning and the end. There's nothing wrong with that, right? Or you might want to end with a little gift that they can take home to their child, maybe something simple like bubbles that you can encourage them to take home, use it with their children, to really play with them and maybe see it a little differently now, watch a little bit more carefully for how they light up, and tie that back to the beginning of your conversation, to watch their children light up in play and to remember that that is emblematic or an outward expression of this shift that's happening within their brains, that their brains are lighting up, that they're growing, that they're learning, and that is why play is so important. So there are many different things that you could do and many different variations on this one idea of having a parent play date. But I would encourage you to find some way to intentionally connect with your parents this year and communicate to them the importance of play and why and how you use it in your classroom. As teachers, it can be really frustrating to feel like the work that you do just isn't really appreciated or really understood. But just like we don't expect children to come to us already knowing everything, and just like we take the time to find out where they are and teach them where they are, we need to do the same with their parents and find out where they are in their understanding of play and teach them and support them as they come to understand more. It will not only give them a greater appreciation for the amazing work that you're doing in the classroom, but it will also help them to be better parents and to better support their children and their development. That was really a main goal for me for writing the Why We Play letters, to help teachers to communicate about play and its importance without adding one more thing for them to do, because people don't value what they don't understand. So if we want them to value what we do, if we want them to value play and to really, more importantly, to protect it and preserve it and to promote it, we have to start by helping them to understand it. That's the first place. So I hope that you'll take advantage of those letters and or try out having a parent play night to really get your parents on the same page and to help them see what you're doing and why. And to see play, as Mr. Rogers said, as not just a break from the learning, but as serious learning itself, that it's truly the work of childhood. If you do, I would love to hear from you and how things go for you with your parent play night. Maybe we'll have to have a part 2 to this episode to share your own tips and observations to build on. I would love that. Thanks again for listening to Not Just Cute, the podcast. You can find show notes at notjustcute.com/podcast/episode 27. You'll find links to the Why We Play letters along with other interesting tidbits and an outline for your parent play night. I'm Amanda Morgan. You can read more on my blog and sign up for the Not Just Cute newsletter at notjustcute.com, and follow me on Facebook. That's facebook.com/notjustcute. Thanks for listening today, and thank you for standing up for children and for childhood.